Claire Johnson sat at her cluttered desk, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above flickering occasionally, casting a sterile glow over the stacks of legal documents that surrounded her. She had spent countless hours in this office, buried in cases that seemed to blend into one another, a blur of legal jargon and courtroom battles. Yet despite the achievements and accolades she had earned in her career as an attorney, a hollow ache resided deep within her chest, an ache that had only grown sharper over the past 2 decades. Her gaze drifted to a framed photograph perched on the edge of her desk. In it, a younger Claire smiled brightly, her arm wrapped around the shoulders of a handsome man with tousled brown hair and a warm smile. Ethan. His name echoed in her mind like a haunting melody, a constant reminder of the life she had lost in that fateful car accident. The world had changed in an instant, and with it, her dreams of love and happiness had crumbled. Claire had built emotional walls around herself, fortifying her heart against the pain of loss. But today, as she felt the familiar sting of memories flooding back, she wondered if those walls were beginning to crack. "Hey Claire, got a minute?" Her colleague Sarah poked her head through the door, breaking her reverie. Sarah was bright and energetic, an antithesis to Claire's quiet demeanor. Claire forced a smile, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "Sure, what's up?" "I was just wondering if you wanted to join us for lunch. A few of us are heading to that new Italian place down the street," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Claire hesitated. The thought of sitting in a crowded restaurant, surrounded by laughter and conversation, felt daunting. "Thanks, but I think I'll pass today. I have a few things I need to wrap up." "Okay, but don't be a stranger." "We miss you," Sarah replied, her tone shifting to one of concern. Claire nodded, but as Sarah left, the weight of solitude settled back over her. After a few more hours of work, Claire decided she needed a break. The sun was shining brightly outside, illuminating the bustling streets of New York City. She gathered her things and stepped out of the office, allowing the fresh air to wash over her. The vibrancy of the city felt foreign, like a world she no longer belonged to. As she walked through Central Park, the contrast between the lively surroundings and her own inner turmoil became more pronounced. Families picnicked on the grass, children laughed and chased each other, and couples strolled hand in hand. Claire felt like an observer to this life, a ghost haunting the edges of a celebration she could no longer partake in. She paused by a small pond, watching the ducks glide across the water, their movements graceful and carefree. Claire's mind wandered to Ethan, and the memories of their time together played like a slideshow in her head. They had spent countless afternoons in this very park, sharing dreams and laughter, their future stretching before them like an unending path. "Why did you have to leave me?" she whispered to the wind, a question that had no answer. Shaking off the melancholy, Claire continued her walk, her feet carrying her deeper into the park. As she wandered, the vibrant life around her began to fade, replaced by the weight of her thoughts. She felt disconnected from the world, an island in a sea of people. Suddenly, a vibrant stall caught her eye, a street vendor selling handmade trinkets. The colorful array of items, from beaded bracelets to intricate sculptures, drew her in. Claire approached, her curiosity piqued. "Hey there, looking for something special?" the vendor called out, a friendly smile spreading across his face. Claire examined the trinkets, her fingers brushing over their surfaces, but her attention was drawn to the man behind the stall. He had an easy charm about him, his dark hair tousled and a glint of mischief in his eyes. "I'm just browsing," she replied, trying to keep the conversation light. "Take your time. Each piece has its own story," he said, gesturing to a small wooden carving. "That one, for example, is inspired by the city's skyline." Claire nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. As she continued to look around, something caught her eye, a flash of silver on the vendor's wrist. It was a watch, unmistakably similar to the one Ethan had worn. The sight of it sent a jolt through her, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "Excuse me," Claire said, her heart racing as she pointed to the watch. "Where did you get that?" The vendor looked down at the watch, his brow furrowing slightly. "Oh, this? I found it at a flea market a few years ago. It was in a box of odds and ends." Claire's heart sank. It was such a vague answer, yet it stirred a whirlwind of emotions within her. Do you know anything about it? The person it belonged to?" He shrugged, his expression neutral. Just that it's a nice piece. I've had it for a while, but I've never really thought much about it. Claire felt a mixture of disappointment and frustration. It's just that it looks so much like one my fiancé used to wear, she admitted, her voice shaky. The vendor's demeanor shifted, his gaze softening. I understand. Things like this can hold a lot of memories. They stood in silence for a moment, the bustling sounds of the park fading into the background. Claire could feel the weight of her emotions pressing down on her, the walls she had built around herself beginning to tremble. What's your name? She finally asked, needing to anchor herself to something real. Leo, he replied, offering a warm smile that seemed to cut through the heaviness of the moment. And you? Claire, she said, forcing a smile in return, though her heart felt heavy. It's nice to meet you. Likewise, if you ever want to talk about that watch or anything really, I'm here most days, Leo offered, his tone genuine. Claire nodded, feeling a flicker of connection amidst her grief. As she turned to leave, she glanced back at him, her heart still racing. Thank you, Leo. I might take you up on that. As she walked away, the weight of the watch's resemblance to Ethan lingered in her mind, a thread pulling her back toward a past she thought she had buried. The vibrant life of the park continued around her, but for Claire it felt as if the world had shifted, leaving her to grapple with a whirlwind of emotions she had long tried to suppress. With each step, she felt the urge to return, to ask more questions, to uncover the mystery that lay beneath the surface. But for now, she simply walked on, the prospect of tomorrow looming ahead, a tomorrow that might hold answers she hadn't even known she was seeking. Claire's heart raced as she stood before Leo, the street vendor whose hands clutched the very watch that once adorned Ethan's wrist. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows on the pavement, mirroring the shadows of doubt swirling in Claire's mind. She needed answers, and Leo's nonchalant response about finding the watch at a flea market years ago wasn't enough to quell the storm of emotions brewing inside her. Leo, she said, her voice steady but edged with urgency. This watch, it belonged to Ethan. It's not just a piece of jewelry to me. It's a connection to a life I lost, a person I loved. You must know more about where you got it. Leo shifted uncomfortably, his gaze dropping to the watch as if it bore the weight of 1,000 secrets. I told you, I found it at a flea market, just lying there among other things. I thought it was beautiful, so I bought it. Just like that, Claire pressed, her frustration bubbling to the surface. You found it and never thought to wonder about its past? Who it belonged to? Leo met her eyes, a flicker of understanding crossing his face. Listen, I didn't know it belonged to someone special. I needed to find something to make a living, and this watch caught my eye. I thought it might bring me luck. Luck? Claire scoffed, shaking her head. Do you really believe that? This isn't just about luck. This is about memories, about love lost. It's about Ethan. In that moment, Claire felt a strange kinship with Leo, a shared sense of grief that seemed to hang in the air between them. Leo's face softened, and he took a step closer, lowering his voice. I didn't mean to upset you. I can see this watch means a lot to you. More than you can imagine, Claire replied, her voice cracking. I've spent years trying to move on, but he's always there, in my thoughts, in everything I do. And now, you're telling me this watch just appeared in your life without a reason? Leo hesitated, scratching the back of his neck as he contemplated his next words. I might have seen it before, in a different context. A friend of mine had it once, but that was years ago. Claire's pulse quickened. What friend? Can you remember anything more? Please, I need to know. He sighed, frustration evident on his face. I can't remember much. I was new to the city, struggling to fit in. My friend was a collector of sorts, always hunting for rare finds. He mentioned getting something from a man who was charismatic. A lawyer, maybe? I didn't pay much attention at the time. Claire's heart sank. The pieces were scattered, but it felt as if she were grasping at fog. A lawyer? Do you remember his name? Leo shook his head, frustration mingling with his own memories. No, I don't. I just remember that my friend was excited about it. He said it had a story, but I didn't think much of it then. I was too wrapped up in my own problems. Claire's mind raced. It was all too surreal. She had come to this park seeking solace and found herself tangled in a web of unanswered questions. "Leo, please. I need you to think harder. Anything could help." Leo looked away, his expression clouded with contemplation. "I'll try, but you have to understand. I'm not sure how much I can help. I piece together my life day by day, and sometimes the past feels like a blur." Determined, Claire decided then that she wouldn't let this encounter fade into nothingness. After leaving Leo, she returned to her office, her mind buzzing with possibilities. As an attorney, she was trained to dig deep, to uncover truths hidden beneath layers of obscurity. She could do this. The following days were spent in a flurry of research. Claire utilized every resource at her disposal, from online databases to contacts within the legal community. Her investigation into Leo's background revealed snippets of his life that tugged at her heartstrings. He was an immigrant, a man who had come to New York with dreams of success, only to face a relentless tide of challenges. As she pored over public records, Claire felt a rising empathy for Leo. She discovered his struggles, working multiple jobs, battling loneliness, and trying to carve out a place for himself in a city that could be unforgiving. His resilience resonated with her own battles against the grief that had become her constant companion over the years. "Why didn't I see it before?" she murmured to herself one evening, staring at her computer screen filled with pages of Leo's past. "We're both fighting our own demons." Claire's determination only grew. As she navigated through Leo's challenges, she began to feel a sense of purpose. There was a connection forming between them, one that transcended the watch. It was a bond forged in shared experiences of loss, resilience, and the quest for identity. After a sleepless night filled with memories of Ethan, Claire returned to the park, her heart heavy yet hopeful. She sought out Leo, driven by a need to confront him about the watch and the fragments of the past he held. "Leo," she called as she spotted him arranging his trinkets on the makeshift stand. "Can we talk?" He looked up, surprise evident in his eyes. "Claire, I didn't expect to see you again so soon." "I need to know more about the watch," she insisted, her voice firm but laced with a hint of vulnerability. "Please, just be honest with me. I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this story." Leo nodded and Claire noticed the tension in his shoulders. "All right, let's talk, but I can't promise I'll have all the answers." They found a quiet spot on a nearby bench, the sounds of the bustling city fading into the background. "I've been thinking," Leo began, his voice hesitant, "about my friend, the one who had the watch. He was involved in something bigger than just collecting items. He was part of a community that helped newcomers like me." Claire's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "He was passionate about helping immigrants, making sure they knew their rights. I didn't realize it at the time, but he was connected to a charity that had a lot of influence in the city. That's how he got the watch, through a donation or something like that." Claire's mind whirled with this new information. Could it have come from Ethan's charity work? Could it be tied to him in some way? Leo looked into her eyes, his expression serious. "It's possible, but I don't know how. I just remember my friend talking about how some people were dedicated to helping others, how they had big plans." The pieces were starting to come together, but Claire still felt a gaping void where the truth should be. "Do you remember your friend's name?" Leo hesitated, searching his memory. "It was something like Marco, I think." "Marco Reyes." "Marco Reyes," Claire repeated, committing the name to memory. "I'll look into it. Maybe he can help me understand how the watch connects to Ethan." As they spoke, Claire felt a shift within herself. The weight of her grief was still present, but a flicker of hope ignited in its place. Perhaps this journey, this search for truth, wasn't just about Ethan's past. It was also about her future. "Thank you, Leo," she said, her voice softer now, "for being willing to share. I know this isn't easy for either of us." Leo smiled faintly. "It's not easy, but sometimes we need to confront the past to move forward. I believe that." As they parted ways that day, Claire felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was no longer just a woman haunted by loss. She was a seeker of truth, determined to unravel the mysteries surrounding the watch and the man who once wore it. With each step, she felt a connection to Ethan, as if he were guiding her toward a new beginning. And perhaps, just perhaps, She would find a way to heal the wounds of her heart through the revelations yet to come. Claire stood in the park, her heart racing as she faced Leo once more. The sun had begun its descent, casting golden hues across the sky, but the warmth of the light did little to soothe the storm brewing within her. The watch on Leo's wrist glimmered, a constant reminder of her past, and she felt an unrelenting urge to share Ethan's story with him. "Leo," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to tell you about Ethan, about what happened, and how much I've lost." She took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "He was everything to me. We were supposed to build a life together, but in the blink of an eye, that future was ripped away from me." Leo's expression shifted from curiosity to empathy as he nodded, urging her to continue. "I'm listening," he said softly, his eyes reflecting a depth of understanding that surprised her. "He died in a car accident," Claire said, her voice thick with emotion. "I was at work that day, and I didn't even know until it was too late. There was no goodbye, no last moment together. Just nothing." She paused, the weight of her memories pressing heavily on her chest. "The watch you're wearing, he used to wear it every day. It's like a piece of him is still out there somewhere, and I can't let it go." Leo looked down at the watch, his expression contemplative. "I didn't know it meant so much to you. I found it at a flea market years ago, and it always seemed special to me. But I had no idea it belonged to someone who had passed." Claire wiped away a tear that had escaped her control. "I just can't shake the feeling that there's more to this. I need to know how you got it. It feels like fate brought us together." Leo took a step closer, his voice steady. "I wish I could give you the answers you seek, but my life hasn't been easy either. I used to be an artist, you know. I had dreams, big ones. I wanted to make a name for myself, to create something meaningful. But life happened, and I lost everything I cared about. Sometimes it feels like the universe is playing tricks on us." Claire's heart ached at the thought of Leo's struggles. "What happened?" she asked gently, wanting to understand the man before her. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "I was from a small town, caught in the middle of a conflict. My family, they didn't survive. I came to America hoping for a fresh start, but it's been a constant battle to survive here. I sell trinkets, trying to make ends meet, but I can't help but feel like I've lost my passion along the way." "Leo, I'm so sorry," Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I had no idea." They stood in silence for a moment, the shadows lengthening around them. Claire felt an unexpected kinship with Leo, two souls burdened by their pasts, seeking solace in the shared pain of loss. "Maybe we can help each other," she suggested tentatively. "I'm searching for closure, and you need to find your passion again." Leo met her gaze, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes. "You think so?" "I do," she replied, feeling a sense of determination wash over her. "We can work together. I can help you with your art, and you can help me uncover the truth about Ethan. There has to be something more here." Claire felt a spark of inspiration, something she hadn't felt in years. This connection with Leo was weaving a thread of possibility through the fabric of her grief. "All right," Leo said, his voice firm with resolve. "I'm willing to try. Let's figure this out together." As their bond deepened, Claire found herself sharing more about her life with Ethan, their dreams, their plans, the moments that made her heart sing. Leo listened intently, absorbing every word like a sponge. "This is a photo from our trip to the beach," Claire said, pulling out her phone to show him an image. "We were so happy. He loved the ocean, always said it reminded him of freedom." Leo smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. "You looked so alive. There's a light in your eyes that's beautiful." Claire felt a blush creeping up her cheeks at the unexpected compliment. "Thank you. It's hard to remember those moments sometimes, but sharing them with you makes it feel a little more real." As they exchanged stories, Claire felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble, piece by piece. She could see the artist within Leo flickering to life, ignited by her words. Later that evening, as they sat together on a park bench, Leo pulled out a small sketchbook. "I haven't drawn in years, but I think I want to try again," he said, flipping through the pages filled with half-finished sketches. "I used to find joy in creating, but I lost that somewhere along the way. Claire watched as he began to draw, the pencil gliding across the paper with a fluidity that spoke of his lost talent. "I'd love to see what you create," she encouraged, feeling a sense of excitement build within her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a twilight glow over the park, Claire's heart swelled with hope. Maybe this unexpected connection with Leo could lead her to the answers she sought, and perhaps even to her own healing. Then, as Leo continued to sketch, Claire's gaze landed on a small, weathered envelope peeking out from his bag. Curiosity piqued, she reached over and gently tugged it free. "What's this?" she asked, holding it up to the light. Leo's expression shifted suddenly, a shadow passing over his face. "Oh, it's nothing important," he stammered, but Claire could see the tension in his posture. "Leo, please," she urged, her voice soft yet firm. "If we're going to help each other, we need to be honest. What's in the envelope?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair as he weighed his options. Finally, he relented. "It's a photo, one I've kept for a long time." With shaky hands, he opened the envelope and pulled out a worn photograph. Claire leaned in closer, her breath catching in her throat as she realized who was in the picture. The image depicted a community event, and in the background stood Ethan, a bright smile on his face, surrounded by a group of people. Claire's heart raced as she tried to process the significance of this revelation. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Leo's eyes widened with surprise. "I took it at a festival a few years ago. I remember him. He was so kind to everyone. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I felt a connection to the people there." Claire's mind whirled with possibilities. "You were there? All those years ago? How is it that our paths crossed without us knowing?" Leo looked down at the photograph, a mix of emotions swirling in his gaze. "I guess it's fate, or maybe just a strange twist of life." As Claire held the photograph tightly in her hands, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The threads of their lives were more intertwined than she could have ever imagined. And as she stared at Ethan's smiling face, she felt a surge of determination. There was so much more to uncover, and she was ready to delve deeper into the mystery that bound them all together. With Leo by her side, she knew they would navigate the shadows of their pasts, seeking light in the darkest corners. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope rising within her, a promise of healing and rediscovery. Claire stepped into the bustling flea market, her heart racing with anticipation and trepidation. The air was thick with the mingling scents of street food, vintage leather, and the occasional waft of incense from a nearby stall. Vendors called out to passers-by, showcasing their wares, colorful trinkets, handcrafted jewelry, and faded photographs that spoke of lives long past. But Claire's focus was singular. She needed to understand the origins of the watch that had reignited the embers of her grief. As she navigated through the throngs of people, she spotted a small booth adorned with an eclectic assortment of items. Old records, dusty books, and various knickknacks cluttered the table. A friendly-looking woman in her 60s, her hair pulled back into a tight bun, was arranging a collection of vintage jewelry. Claire approached her, her heart pounding in her chest. "Excuse me," Claire began, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I'm looking for someone who might know more about a watch I'm interested in. It belonged to my late fiancé, Ethan Johnson." The woman paused, her hands resting on the table. She turned to Claire with a knowing gaze. "Ethan Johnson, you say? I remember him. A good man he was. Always had a kind word for everyone." Claire felt a lump form in her throat. "You knew him?" "Yes, indeed. He used to come here often, always looking for something unique to add to his collection. He had an eye for beauty and a heart full of kindness." The vendor replied, her voice warm with nostalgia. "What kind of watch are you talking about?" "It's a distinctive vintage piece, silver with intricate engravings. Leo, a street vendor I met, was wearing it," Claire explained, trying to keep her voice steady. "He said he found it here." The woman's eyes lit up with recognition. "Ah, yes, I remember that watch. Ethan bought it here some years back, said it belonged to someone special." Claire felt a rush of emotions, joy mixed with sorrow. "Do you remember anything else? Did he mention where it came from?" The vendor's expression shifted to one of contemplation. He was involved in a charity project, helping immigrants find their footing here in the city. He was very passionate about it. I think he was working on something significant before it happened. Significant? Claire pressed, her curiosity piqued. The woman nodded slowly. He had a vision. Something about creating a safe space for newcomers. I remember him talking about it one day, how he wanted to make a difference. But things got complicated. It's a shame, really. He was one of the good ones. Claire's heart raced. This was the first time she had heard of Ethan's involvement in something so noble since his death. Do you know who he was working with? Anyone who might still be involved? Not directly, but I know he was collaborating with a man named Carlos. You might find him up at the community center a few blocks from here, the vendor suggested, her eyes glimmering with a mix of sadness and admiration. If you're looking to learn more about Ethan, that's where I would start. Thank you, Claire said, her voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the revelation settled heavily in her chest. Ethan had been a part of something bigger than herself, something she had never known. The idea of pursuing that path, of understanding her fiancé's unfulfilled dreams, filled her with determination. As she left the flea market, Claire's mind raced with possibilities. She had to find this Carlos. Perhaps he held the key to understanding not just Ethan's past, but also her own tangled emotions. Later that afternoon, Claire found herself standing outside the community center, a modest building with peeling paint and a bright mural celebrating diversity. The sounds of laughter and chatter spilled out into the street, filling the air with a sense of warmth and belonging. Taking a deep breath, Claire pushed open the door. Inside, the atmosphere was alive with activity. Children played in a corner, while adults gathered around tables, discussing various community initiatives. A bulletin board plastered with flyers caught her eye, events, classes, and opportunities for involvement. "Can I help you?" A voice interrupted her thoughts. Claire turned to see a tall man in his 40s, with kind eyes and a welcoming smile. "I'm looking for Carlos," she replied, trying to keep her tone casual despite the nerves swirling in her stomach. "I'm Carlos," he said, extending a hand. "What brings you here?" Claire shook his hand, feeling an instant sense of comfort. "I'm Claire, and I'm trying to find out more about Ethan Johnson. I hear he was involved in some of the work you do here." Carlos's expression shifted, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. Ethan was a remarkable man. He dedicated so much of his time to helping others. "What would you like to know?" "I've heard he was working on a project to help immigrants," Claire began, her voice steadying as she spoke. "I want to understand what he was trying to accomplish." Carlos nodded, a thoughtful look crossing his face. Ethan was driven by a deep sense of justice. He believed everyone deserved a fair chance, especially those who had come to this country seeking a better life. He was trying to establish a community support network, a safe haven where people could get legal guidance, job training, and emotional support. Claire's heart swelled with pride. "That sounds incredible. What happened? Why didn't it come to fruition?" There were challenges, unfortunately. Some funding fell through, and the political climate made things more difficult. Ethan was frustrated but determined. He wanted to keep fighting for the cause, but Carlos's voice trailed off, and Claire sensed the weight of unspoken grief in his words. "But?" Claire prompted gently. "But then he died," Carlos said quietly, his gaze dropping to the floor. "It hit all of us hard. We lost a leader, a friend, and a visionary. I'm still trying to carry on his work, but it's not the same without him." Claire's heart ached for the man who had dedicated his life to helping others. "I didn't know any of this. I've spent so long wrapped up in my own grief. I didn't realize how much he impacted the lives of those around him." Carlos looked at her with understanding. "Grief can be isolating, but you're here now, seeking answers. That's a good first step. Ethan would have wanted you to continue his legacy." Claire felt tears prick at her eyes, a mix of sorrow and a burgeoning sense of purpose. "I want to help, to understand more about what he was trying to do. Is there any way I can get involved?" Carlos smiled, a glimmer of hope lighting up his expression. "Of course. We can always use more hands and hearts. There's a meeting next week where we discuss ongoing projects. I'd love for you to come." "Thank you," Claire replied, feeling a sense of renewed determination. "I'll be there." As they talked further, Claire discovered more about the community center's initiatives and the people they were helping. Each story Carlos shared painted a vivid picture of Ethan's impact and the lives he had touched. After an hour of conversation, Claire felt a sense of connection, not only to Ethan, but also to the community he had fought for. She realized that her grief could be transformed into action, a way to honor Ethan's memory while also finding her own path forward. Leaving the community center, Claire's heart was full. She was no longer just a woman haunted by loss. She was beginning to see herself as an integral part of a larger story, one that Ethan had woven into the fabric of his life. As she made her way back through the market, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of something significant. With Leo by her side, they could uncover the secrets of Ethan's past together. Perhaps, just perhaps, in seeking out the truth, she would find a way to heal the wounds that had plagued her for so long. And with that thought, Claire's resolve solidified. She was ready to embrace this journey, ready to learn about the man she loved and the legacy he had left behind. Claire Johnson sat at the small wooden table in the corner of a quaint cafe, her fingers tracing the edges of a stack of old letters she had uncovered from Ethan's past. Each envelope bore the faint scent of aged paper and a hint of nostalgia, a tangible connection to a life once filled with promise and purpose. The sun streamed through the window, casting warm light over her face as she pored over the contents, her heart racing with every revelation. "These letters, Leo," she said, glancing up at the street vendor-turned-friend who was seated across from her. "They reveal so much about Ethan's commitment to helping others, especially immigrants. I had no idea he was involved in something so significant." Leo leaned closer, intrigued by the words that poured from Claire's lips. "What do they say?" His voice was soft yet filled with the urgency of shared discovery. Claire took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the neatly penned lines of Ethan's handwriting. "He was corresponding with various organizations," she explained, her voice trembling slightly. "He wanted to create a legal framework that would protect their rights, something that could help people like you." A flicker of emotion crossed Leo's face. "He was a good man," he murmured, a hint of admiration lacing his tone. "It's rare to find someone willing to fight for others. I wish I had known him." "You did know him, in a way," Claire replied, her heart aching. "You both fought similar battles, just on different fronts." She looked back at the letters, her fingers brushing over the delicate paper as she continued. "He wrote about how he dreamed of uniting communities and offering them a voice. It's like he was preparing for something big, something that could change lives." Leo nodded, a thoughtful expression settling on his features. "It sounds like he was a visionary. Maybe he was inspired by his own experiences, or perhaps by people he met along the way. Did any of the letters mention specific projects or plans?" Claire flipped through the letters, a sense of determination igniting within her. "Let me see. Here it is." She read aloud, her voice steadying with each word. "I have been in contact with several local charities, and I believe we can develop a program that provides legal resources to those in need. It's time someone stepped up to ensure these individuals know their rights." As she spoke, Claire's eyes sparkled with a newfound purpose. He was passionate, Leo. This was his mission before everything changed. Leo's gaze was fixed on her, a mixture of reverence and inspiration swirling in his expression. "And now, you're uncovering all of this. It's like he's passing that torch to you, Claire." The weight of his words settled over Claire, filling her with a sense of destiny she had long thought lost. "I want to honor him, to continue what he started. Maybe this is why I found you, why we crossed paths. We could work together, investigate more, and perhaps even revive his vision." A flicker of enthusiasm ignited in Leo's eyes. "You really believe that? That we could make a difference?" Claire nodded, her heart swelling with conviction. "I do. I may not have the artistic talent you possess, but I have the legal knowledge and the determination to fight for what's right. Together, we could bring his project to life and help those who need it most." As they discussed their plans, a sense of camaraderie blossomed between them, each feeling the weight of their shared mission pushing them forward. For the first time in years, Claire felt a glimmer of hope, a light breaking through the shadows of her mourning. Maybe this will reignite your passion for art as well, Claire suggested, a playful smile dancing on her lips. You mentioned you were once a promising artist. Perhaps you could create pieces that advocate for these causes, raise awareness through your talent. Leo chuckled softly, the warmth of her encouragement wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. You really think so? I've put that part of me away for too long. Well, it's time to bring it back, Claire urged, her voice filled with enthusiasm. You have a unique perspective and experiences that could inspire others. Art can be a powerful tool for change. Leo's smile widened. You're right, Claire. I want to do this. I want to help. If Ethan believed in something so deeply, then I should too. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, ideas bouncing back and forth like a lively game of catch. They began to sketch out a plan, brainstorming ways to engage the community and build awareness around immigrant rights. Just as Claire felt a surge of excitement at the prospect of their collaboration, her phone vibrated on the table, pulling her out of the moment. She glanced at the screen, her heart sinking as she noted the unknown number flashing back at her. Do you need to take that? Leo asked, sensing the sudden shift in her demeanor. Claire hesitated, her instincts prickling with unease. It's an unknown number. I should probably answer. She swiped to accept the call, bringing the phone to her ear. Hello? She said cautiously. A voice, low and gravelly, responded. Claire Johnson? Yes, who is this? She replied, a knot forming in her stomach. You don't know me, but I know you, and I know Ethan. You need to be careful. Someone is watching you. Claire's heart raced, panic threatening to consume her. What do you mean? Who's watching me? You'll find out soon enough. Just remember, not everything is as it seems. The line clicked dead before she could respond, leaving her staring at her phone in disbelief. What was that about? Leo asked, concern etched on his face. I don't know, Claire stammered, her mind racing. Someone just called and warned me that someone is watching. It felt ominous, like a threat. Leo leaned back in his chair, his brows furrowed. That's unsettling. Do you think it's related to Ethan's past? Maybe someone who knew him? I don't know, Claire admitted, her voice trembling slightly. But it feels connected. Just when I thought I was moving forward, something like this happens. Leo reached across the table, placing a comforting hand on hers. We'll figure this out together. You're not alone in this, Claire. Whatever it is, we can confront it head on. Claire looked into his eyes, finding strength in his assurance. Yet beneath her resolve, a lingering sense of dread tugged at her heart. What secrets from Ethan's past were waiting to resurface, and how would they impact her quest for closure? The call had cast a shadow over her newfound purpose, leaving her to grapple with the uncertainty of what lay ahead. As they sat in the cafe, the vibrant world outside continued to buzz with life. But Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something darker was lurking just beyond her perception, threatening to unravel the fragile threads of her rediscovery. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the bustling streets of New York, Claire found herself seated at a small cafe table, nervously tapping her fingers on the table's surface. The day had been heavy with the weight of the mysterious phone call she had received earlier. An unknown number, the voice on the other end shrouded in shadows and secrets. She had tried to brush it off, but the unease had settled deep in her chest like a stone. Leo arrived moments later, his usual vibrant demeanor dulled by the gravity of the situation. His eyes searched Claire's face as he approached. Hey, you okay? He asked, pulling out a chair and sitting down across from her. Claire took a deep breath, her heart racing. I got a phone call today. Someone claiming to know about Ethan's death. They didn't give me their name, just said they had information. Her voice trembled. Slightly as she spoke, the memories of the past rising like a tide within her. Leo's brow furrowed, concern etched on his features. Did they say anything specific? Maybe we should go to the police? No, I don't think that's necessary, Claire replied, shaking her head. They just hinted at something bigger, like there was more to Ethan's life than I ever knew. It's like there's a piece of the puzzle missing. Leo leaned closer, his voice low and steady. Then we need to figure this out. Together. We've already uncovered so much, and maybe this is just another layer to Ethan's story. Claire nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for Leo's unwavering support. I think we should start with the letters, the ones I found in Ethan's old things. There was one that seemed different. It was tucked away in a book, and I didn't give it much thought at the time. Let's go through them, Leo suggested, his eyes shimmering with determination. Maybe there's a clue there that can help us understand what's going on. They headed to Claire's apartment, a place that often felt more like a museum of memories than a home. As they stepped inside, Claire felt a familiar pang of nostalgia wash over her. The framed photographs of happier times, their smiles, their laughter, felt like ghosts haunting the corners of her heart. "Where do you keep the letters?" Leo asked, breaking her reverie. "In my desk," Claire replied, leading him to her workspace. She opened the drawer, rummaging through a jumble of papers until her fingers brushed against something smooth and folded. "Here they are." She pulled out a stack of letters, each yellowed and worn, the ink slightly faded. Claire glanced at Leo, who was already leaning over the table, intrigued. "Let's see what we have," he encouraged. As they began to sift through the letters, Claire's heart raced with anticipation, the air thick with unspoken questions. They read through casual notes, some filled with affection and mundane details about their lives, until they reached a letter that seemed different. It was longer, more intense, and the handwriting was hurried, almost frantic. "Claire, if you're reading this, it means something has gone wrong," Claire read aloud, her voice quaking with emotion. She paused, glancing up at Leo, who was listening intently. What did he mean? Leo furrowed his brow, urging her to continue. "Keep going. There must be more." Claire took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she unfolded the letter completely. "There are things I can't explain, things that are dangerous. The charity work I'm involved in, it's bigger than you know. There are people who don't want this to succeed, and I fear for our safety. If something happens to me, look for the truth in the project we started together. It could change everything." The words hung in the air, charged with a sense of urgency and foreboding. Claire's heart raced as she processed the implications. What was Ethan involved in? What project? "Maybe the charity," Leo suggested, his eyes narrowing in thought. "He could have been working on something that put him in danger. We need to find out what it was." Claire nodded, her mind racing. "You're right. We need to dig deeper. This could explain everything. The phone call, the watch, even the connections we've seen so far." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door, interrupting their discussion. Claire's heart skipped a beat. "Who could that be?" she whispered, her anxiety flaring. Leo exchanged a glance with her, his expression a mixture of curiosity and caution. "I'll check," he said, rising from his seat. Claire watched as he approached the door, her heart pounding in her chest. When Leo opened it, a figure stood there, cloaked in a long, dark coat, the collar turned up against the chill of the evening air. A shadow obscured their face, but Claire could sense an intensity radiating from them. "Are you Claire Johnson?" the figure asked, their voice low and gravelly. "Yes, I am," Claire replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" The figure stepped forward, revealing a pair of piercing eyes that seemed to bore into her soul. "I know the truth about Ethan's death," they said, their tone serious, "and I have something that belongs to him." Claire's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean? Who are you?" "I can't reveal my identity. Not yet," the figure continued, glancing nervously over their shoulder. "But I have a key, a literal key, that can unlock the secrets he left behind. You need to understand there are people who are still watching. If they find out I'm here, it could put us all in danger." Leo stepped protectively in front of Claire, his expression fierce. "What kind of danger are we talking about?" "Ethan was involved in something much larger than you realize," the figure replied, their gaze flicking between Claire and Leo. "The charity work? It was a front, a way to gather information and resources for 'cause that threatened powerful interests. They don't want the truth to come out, and Ethan was in the crosshairs because of it." Claire felt the world tilt beneath her, the weight of the revelation crashing down on her. "What do you mean, a front? What was he really doing?" The figure hesitated before pulling a small metallic key from their pocket, holding it up for Claire to see. This key opens a safe deposit box. Inside, you'll find documents, letters, photographs, everything you need to understand the full extent of what Ethan was involved in. But you have to be careful. If you decide to pursue this, you're stepping into dangerous territory. Claire's mind raced, the implications of the figure's words spiraling into a whirlwind of questions and fears. "Where is this safe deposit box?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It's in a bank downtown. I'll give you the address, but you must promise to be cautious. Time is of the essence," the figure said, moving closer, their urgency palpable. Leo glanced at Claire, his eyes filled with determination. "We can handle this. Together." Claire nodded, her resolve solidifying as she met the figure's gaze. "We'll find out the truth. We owe it to Ethan." The figure handed Claire a slip of paper with the address scribbled on it. "Be careful. They're always watching, and if they realize you're onto something, it could endanger you both." As the figure turned to leave, Claire felt a mix of fear and exhilaration wash over her. She was standing at the precipice of a revelation that could change everything. The past she had thought she understood was about to unravel, revealing a truth that had been hidden away for far too long. As the door closed behind the mysterious visitor, Claire and Leo exchanged a determined look, their hearts racing with the anticipation of what lay ahead. Together, they were about to embark on a journey that could either lead to closure or further into the depths of the unknown. The shadows of the past were closing in, but armed with the key and their shared resolve, they were ready to face whatever secrets awaited them.